The abandonment of the American worker began in the middle of the last century. No particular date marks the moment. The process unfolded gradually, pushed along by evolving economic theories and the misguided public policies based on them. But it would be a mistake to call the abandonment accidental. The approach to economic policy that emerged after the Great Depression and the Second World War discounted the interests of the typical worker and the stability of his social environment in favor of faster overall national growth and greater consumption, including by redistributing money to those left behind. Policymakers understood the implications of the ideas they embraced and the actions they took, and they largely accomplished their goals. Even today, mainstream politicians struggle to comprehend the popular disgruntlement about what they perceive as clear achievements. The worker's dilemma can be linked with two major developments in post-war economic thinking, which combine to produce the central metaphor of modern American politics, the economic pie. The first was the overwhelming importance assigned to measurement of the economy's total size. This had been critical to the federal government's Keynesian response to the Great Depression, which relied on public spending to boost demand and thus production. Such management of the economy required accurate knowledge of production levels and trends, so the U.S. Department of Commerce developed the system of national accounting that became the GDP, a Herculean effort whose leader, Simon Kuznets, would win the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences for his work on economic growth. When the Depression gave way to a global military conflict, the outcome of which would turn on the industrial capacity of the Allied and Axis economies, GDP became an existential concern. As the economy regained its peacetime footing, national accounts recorded fewer M4 Sherman tanks headed to the front and more Chevrolet Bel Air convertibles destined for the suburbs. Notwithstanding Kuznets' warning to Congress that the welfare of a nation can scarcely be inferred from a measurement of national income, GDP transitioned smoothly into the primary measure of prosperity, and GDP growth became the primary goal of economic policy. Long after saturation bombing ended, and even after national economies had revived, cross-country comparisons of GDP remained the means for assessing national power. GDP per capita defined a citizenry's well-being. The second key mid-century development in economic thinking was the ascent of consumers and the priority given to their interests at the expense of producers. Although this observation conjures a vision of two constituencies vying for the same resources, here the dynamic is more complex. Every individual is both a producer and a consumer, the economy an engine of both production and consumption. If unions drive wages higher and prices rise, households might benefit in their paychecks and suffer in the checkout line simultaneously. If cheap imports drive domestic manufacturers out of business, the reverse might be true. The choice of which identity gets preference has substantial consequences for how we define prosperity. A goal of rising productivity for all workers leads toward a very different policy agenda from one that aims to maximize what each household can consume. For most of history, drawing a distinction between the roles of consumer and producer would have meant little. While individuals within a family or other close-knit social group have always specialized in certain functions, as a unit, they once relied almost exclusively on their collective output to sustain themselves. Increases in consumption were increases in production, and vice versa. But the story of economic development since at least the start of the Industrial Revolution has been in large part a story of disaggregating these activities.